Our team at Atlantic Construction Podcast is excited to announce our newest partner, Luminous Labs. Luminous Labs is the leading provider of architectural visualizations for developers, homeowners, architects, and more. Luminous Labs has a team of experienced designers and visualizers using cutting-edge technology to bring your 3D renderings to life. Using these architectural visualizations will give you a sense of scale, space, and design, allowing you to make informed decisions about your projects before construction even begins. These high-end architectural visualizations are a perfect tool for presentations, marketing materials, and design reviews, allowing you to communicate your vision to stakeholders, clients, and more. This episode is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Pizant Building Products. Pizant Building Products has been providing contractors and builders with the supplies necessary to complete their jobs since 1964. They have built a reputation of honest, helpful, and quality service, serving the HRM for the last 58 years, now with 7 locations in Nova Scotia and 1 in New Brunswick. Our team at Atlantic Construction Podcast is extremely excited to announce our new co-branded partner, Procore. Procore is the global leader in construction management software. We'll be conducting several podcast episodes with Procore users and construction companies across the country in 2023, among many other things. Stay tuned. We're excited. Okay, welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Joined today by Alain Lefebvre, an associate with Fairwinds Training and Development. Really happy to have Alain with us today. Thanks for giving us your time, Alain, and for being here. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Appreciate having the opportunity.
Yeah, we go back a long way. I first met you when you were with the folks at the Construction Association of Nova Scotia. I think that's when we first met. But maybe you can give us a little insight into your journey.
No, I'd love to do that, and I'll certainly get to the cans part in a moment. But I was thinking actually earlier today, what would have been my kind of first touch point in the construction industry, and I was thinking back, it was actually when I was in university.
St. Mary's.
I went to St. Mary's, and during the summer, I actually worked as a general labor with Dexter Municipal.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Which at the time, I wouldn't have necessarily seen, it was a great experience, but I wouldn't have necessarily seen the value in it that it actually kind of worked out to be from the perspective of, the world that I'm in now. Yeah. I actually got a chance to at least see some of that.
What kind of stuff were you doing?
Base level, entry level type work within the industry. I was doing anything from.
Well, I was going to say, that's a tough job. Start out as a laborer with Dexter's,
It was, yeah. And at the time too, there was a ton of heavy lifting. The first job was actually that I would have been a part of was actually at St. Mary's when they replaced the old AstroTurf field with kind of the new surface that they have there.
Okay, so you were going to St. Mary's, and then your summer job was on campus too.
That's right.
Dexter's.
Yeah, nice. And then that moved over to Burnside, Acrely Drive, all the natural gas work that they were doing in that area.
So what year was this?
Jeez, this
late
been
early 2000s.
Early 2000s, 2003, 2004, maybe.
Yeah. Because you played football there too, huh?
I did, yeah. Believe it or not.
So you probably had a better season the next season with the off-season training as a laborer.
I was in the best shape of my life. Yeah, no question. Lifting.
Were you QB? What position were you?
No. I was a defensive back. I was more of a role player.
Did you play all 4 years there, or 5? Or?
I spent 4 years there.
How was the team in those days?
They were good. Unfortunately, it was kind of the post. Vanier Cup years. So we were still a good team. Typically we'd win the AUS championship, but we didn't, unfortunately I didn't get a national championship ring.
But you coached a bit of football too after that, did you not?
I did, yeah. And I still do actually, which is actually, pretty good tie into what I'm doing now at Fairwinds.
Yes, with Rick,
how we look at a lot of the work that we do is we look at it from a coaching perspective. Right. So I'm, whether I'm in my personal life or whether I'm in my professional life, I'm doing a lot of coaching. I coach high school football. I coach all 3 of my kids in their hockey and baseball. So I spend a lot of time coaching, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. And and then after your first taste of kind of the construction field, you're on and worked at Cairns for quite some time.
I did. From there, actually, after I graduated university, I was still, like a lot of people, kind of unsure, kind of what was next, and where a BA in psychology was going to take me. And I actually ended up going back to school and taking the advanced diploma program at NSCC in Human Resource Management, which is a fantastic program.
Right.
And as a part of that program, this is going to get to how I got cans, I promise.
Yeah,
but as a part of that program, we used to always have guest speakers from different industries, different companies come in and talk to us.
At NSCC?
At NSCC, yeah. And one afternoon, Juanita McDonald came in, and Juanita at the time was working for the Construction Association in Nova Scotia, CANS, leading the Building Futures for Youth program. I don't know if you're familiar with the program, but it's a really cool initiative that exposes high school kids to careers in the construction trades. And Juanita was talking to the class, telling us all about that initiative and the connections, certainly to the HR world from a talent attraction and recruitment perspective. And I just thought it sounded like a really, really cool program, a really, I think a really important initiative as well. So I struck up a conversation with Juanita after her presentation, which turned into a 6-week unpaid internship at CANS. Which I was then able to turn into almost a decade at CANS, working in a number of different roles, all kind of focusing on attracting, developing, retaining talent within the province's construction sector.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I first met you when you were with CANS, it's just very approachable was the first kind of inclination I got, or intuition, when I first met you. And it doesn't surprise me. You struck up a conversation when she was at NSCC, and that's how you kind of have that card when you're a student, right? I remember being a student at SMU thinking, this is a free card for me to get to talk to as many people as I can, and if that's what I should do. And like, I think that there's more value in that than any criteria or curriculum that I learned. So,
absolutely. And at the time as well, these internships, they were pretty competitive, because we were responsible for kind of figuring out for ourselves and finding a company. So,
right. Yeah.
Kind of took that opportunity and ran with it. And, it worked out really well for me. I'm super grateful for the time that I spent working at CANS and all the phenomenal people that, certainly that I worked with, but got to work for. And it was just, all the things I learned. It was a really great experience for me. Yeah.
And then just the networking opportunities that are on your, on your pulse every day when you're there in an association like that.
And I mean, being able to bring, those contacts, that networking, again, all of those lessons learned, being able to bring those to the world that I'm in now, which is training and development, outside of kind of the nonprofit sector. Extremely valuable. I'm running into people constantly who I met, and I was able to build pretty strong relationships with through my time at CANS.
Yeah, and to circle back on the football coaching, is I think you were talking earlier when we were chatting. So Rick Flair, obviously people will know with Fairwinds, and his wife
Brenda.
Yeah. Sorry. So Rick and Brenda, but you coached one of their kids in football, did you not?
I did. That's how I would have met Rick and the family initially. I believe his youngest boy, Liam, I actually coached him in football. Great kid, very much like his dad. And we
lots of energy.
A lot of energy. Yeah, absolutely. Really.
I only talked to Rick once or twice, but that's the first inclination I had.
Yeah, really charismatic, ton of energy.
That's the word.
Super fun to listen to, super fun to be around. And, just even through coaching his son, we kind of met and kicked, I think we got along, and we had similar personalities, and it worked out really well. And then from there, actually, I didn't even know this at the time, but from there, Rick, I actually got to kind of reconnect with Rick as he was doing training for us at the time at CANS. So he was actually an instructor, him and Brenda, coming in and teaching programs at CANS at the time. And we reconnected then.
Right, yes.
Built a relationship, and have been fortunate to maintain that relationship all the way up.
No, that's great. I feel like, as you're telling me that story, I can think of buddies, people I know, whether they're in the construction industry or outside, and that was how the first connection with their boss was made. They coached their kids in hockey or football or something to do with the sports world. And I thought of 3 or 4 different people I know who got jobs. As you were telling that story, it just kind of it's a good in, you know. It's when you're going to games and stuff and doing business development, and you're going to Moosehead's game or Wanderers game or Thunderbird, something in the city, or you're coaching.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times that's where you make those connections. It doesn't hurt if down the road your boss is hiring you, knows you coached this kid, right? It kind of gives you a bit of an in there, you know.
Absolutely. And I probably sound like a broken record. People probably get sick of me hearing it, but I'm constantly kind of making those connections between the work world, what we do, and sports. And I'm just such a huge fan of, all the things associated with sports that are transferable, within the world, that, the work world, whether it's construction, whether it's, other industries, other sectors, like the commitment, the ability to take feedback, the ability to be coached, all of these things, even just kind of general communication skills. And, one thing that always stood out to me, I remember playing hockey as like a 11-year-old or something. And, I remember learning then that if you were going to be late or not going to practice or something came up,
there's consequences.
Yeah. You phoned. I remember like an Adam hockey coach telling me that, if you're not going to be there, you phone me. I don't want to hear from mom. I don't want to hear from dad. Or anyone.
Really, eh?
You
that
pick
young.
up the phone. You call.
Awesome.
And those are the lessons. And, I think some people, correctly or incorrectly, will kind of throw generational things out there these days. But those are some of the things that aren't necessarily happening out within the workforce.
Oh, yeah. We've had lots of guests on in the construction world who talk a lot about, I just wish somebody could pick up the phone. And I can think of 4 or 5 recent guests that, as you're saying that, but I don't think you sound like a broken record at all. I think there's so many analogies and synergies when it comes to the sporting world. I mean, the sports world is a business world too, whether it's the university. I mean, it's all under an umbrella of a lot of management and, especially the world you're in now with Fairwinds Training and Development. I mean, it's training and development, like coaching, building teams. This is all what you're doing for businesses, but it wouldn't be that much different than trying to build up a winning team on the ice or on the field.
Yeah, no, right? Absolutely. And I think, I've seen over the last few years, it seems like, again, in that kind of, well, not necessarily even just within the training and development world, but within kind of the management, the world of managing people in general, there's been a shift towards, a lot more of kind of that coaching leadership style, that helping people, achieve results and achieve their goals versus kind of that
climb the ladder and
exactly.
A little more. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and I hear the word collaboration a lot more, that definitely a lot of the, whether it's CEOs from larger firms or owners of subcontracting companies, like a lot of people are trying to really be conscious of the culture they're building, and the industry's changing, and I think probably, you and I are close to the same age, like kind of grew up working summer jobs in construction too. And I can definitely see a change from which is what it was then, whether it's 15 or 20 years ago, to what the way things are now around Nova Scotia, especially spent the last 10 years in the industry in Nova Scotia. And there's a different mindset now where it's like, it's more collaboration. There's not as much, I'm trying to think of the proper word, democratic versus autocratic.
I think that's it. And again, here I go. I'll go back to kind of the sports analogy, but I think
please do. Yeah.
There's a reason when you look at the professional sports world, you don't really see the Mike Keenans anymore, or you see the Mike Babcocks, these kind of guys been run out, because today's, whether it's today's athlete, whether it's today's employee, they just don't, for good or bad, they just don't respond to it the way that they might have. 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And so people like that they're not going to last in those positions, right?
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them.
Exactly. For exactly. That's right. Yeah. For people in the training and developing world, it might not be a bad thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the topics of discussion for us have been around the labor shortage, and obviously Fairwinds Training Development. Like, I mean, you guys are dealing with industries all across, many different planes, and on the HR front and recruitment and succession. And maybe just for context, you could kind of explain for our listeners, as an associate, what you spend your time doing in the last few years with Fairwinds, and what that looks like, and as far as like the value you're bringing and how you're helping these companies with these different important services. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, what we do at Fairwinds, and I think it's a big part of our value proposition and part of what separates us as well from a lot of our competition, is we've got a really wide kind of range of kind of services and we'll say specialties that we can offer. Ultimately, we're, I would describe us, I suppose, as kind of a single source provider for training and development, but it's HR consulting and advising, things like obviously talent attraction, recruitment, selection, performance management, all the different things that go into that. We're very, we're also specialized quite a bit, obviously, in training and facilitation. So we do quite a bit of, both team and individual development programs, leadership programs, programs focusing on emotional intelligence, on communication skills, on, motivation and accountability. Even, subjects like equity, diversity, inclusion, we provide training on. We're heavily involved. Rick in particular.
That's a trend, and it's a trending thing, right? I mean, people have to be educated on how to kind of handle the influx of so much diversity.
Absolutely, they do. And I mean, you talk about, you mentioned the labor shortage, and businesses, organizations really don't. It's a business case now. It's not just doing something because it's the right thing to do. You need people. You need to find strategies. You need to find, untapped pools of talent where you can, find and develop people. But from, I guess, to kind of circle back to your question a little bit and kind of connect a little bit more what we do to that labor shortage, which is, kind of the big item on everyone's
and not just a
mind.
big problem with, yes, most of our listeners, it's a construction podcast, but we've got lots of people that are, in finance, in law, in all kinds of anything that kind of is around the realm of construction, which doesn't really exclude anything. So, I mean, this is something that's a problem across the board,
sector,
across the country.
Tourism, hospitality. I always tell one story, a year or so ago, I was in Bears Lake going through a drive-through. I think it was an A&W maybe. And I was at the drive-thru and I'm speaking into the thing that you get your order to. And it has literally a kind of a handwritten piece of paper on the drive-thru that says,
"We're short-staffed.
You can try.
You're going to wait.
We might be here. If someone responds, great. If not, sorry, we don't."
Really? That's funny.
So it's certainly not just construction, though. It's definitely had a pretty significant impact on the construction industry, but I think everyone's kind of feeling the pinch of, whether you want to call it a labor shortage or a skills shortage. Either way, it's tough. It's really tough to find the people that businesses need to do the work. And I feel bad sometimes. I'm talking over the last couple of years, I'm talking with some contractors who are, they're not necessarily bidding on projects because they're not confident.
The risk is too high.
That they're going to have the people they need to do the work. So, fortunately, part of what we do at Fairwinds is we're able to provide support to organizations, I'll say, to not necessarily overcome the challenge, because it's a really hard thing to overcome, but certainly to mitigate and find strategies to, limit that challenge. Specifically, we do a ton of talent attraction, recruitment, selection. I know, just to give you an example of we're able to kind of operate, and this is how we promote ourselves a lot of time. We're able to operate as kind of that, for organizations that don't have those resources, whether it's
or
that
an HR
department, whatever it may be, we're able to operate as kind of that extension or that branch, that arm of HR for these organizations. And again, for example, I've been working pretty closely with with an employer over the past few months. I won't mention their name, but a locally started business, but now a national supplier of HVAC refrigeration equipment.
Okay.
And this is a company that experienced a ton of growth in their business throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic.
But growing pains, right?
But growing pains to go along with that. And, they were also at the same time experiencing a lot of kind of generational turnover. And the managers who were ultimately responsible for doing a lot of the hiring just have so much on their plates that they're not able to, commit the time to kind of filling that talent pipeline.
Yep.
So what we're able to do is literally partner with that organization and take all of that on their behalf, straight from, job analysis, job description development to ad placement, promotion, all the way to, job offer and contract negotiation.
Yeah. Your resume screening, and then after that process is done and a hire's made, you're also helping them with, retention and solving the turnover problem with training, so that, these employees are working toward what they need for the organization and the long-term goals. And so you've really got your arms wrapped around a company when you do engage in that regard. Right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that's a piece that sometimes gets lost when looking at kind of the challenges, the labor challenges that a lot of employers are facing. And that,
it's not just about bringing them to the door.
It's not just about bringing.
You're far past that.
Your best recruitment strategy by far is a retention strategy. Yeah. And it's, that old saying that people don't, they don't quit their job, they quit their boss. So we do a ton of work working with different companies, specifically helping them build capacity with their frontline managers, their frontline
to be better coaches, to be better management staff, to be right. So you're not just training the employees that are hired, working their way toward the skills they need within the organization. You're training the upper management.
Exactly. And upper management, purpose. Yes. And we certainly do executive coaching and work with upper management. We do a lot of work with, again, frontline supervisors or new managers.
Right.
A lot of the time. I think that is especially important in the construction world, because I think something we come up against quite often, I'm sure it happens in other industries as well, is that, people who will progress on sometimes to position of management or supervision, it seems to happen a lot of the time, not necessarily because they have those management skills, but because they're really proficient at something technical. You know what I mean? So this fella is great at operating this piece of equipment, great employee. We're going to move him or her up to a supervisory position. And if you think about that, I always like to think of
not
kind
necessarily common sense.
It's a completely different skill set, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it in kind of the opposite scenario, imagine if you were to take a skilled manager, someone who's really good at kind of managing people, someone who's good at coaching and providing feedback.
A lot of times these kinds of people are not drilled in, highly skilled at one technical thing.
Yeah. But again, if you took that person and said, oh, you're really good at that, let's put you behind the controls of this piece of equipment.
Yeah, he'd be going crazy.
It would be a disaster.
Yeah.
But we do it sometimes in kind of the opposite direction.
You're right.
So I think it's really, really important. It's something that we do quite a bit, is again, focusing on building capacity with those managers.
Yeah, so many complex decisions to make within an organization, and have that third party, well, I'll call it third party, which it is, like that, have that assistance. And even when I look on, I'll rhyme off a few of the different topics on some of the training programs, the team development, personal development, like communication skills, conflict management, dealing with difficult people. Do I want to be a leader? Leading change, managing for results, motivating, personal effectiveness, coaching, time management. I mean, I can see like some people looking at these things and you think like, oh, here we go, kind of the cliche kind of stuff. But anyone who's owned a business or who's been in a position where they've had to make decisions, and it's hard, and you make the right one sometimes wrong. Like these kind of things are so important.
Absolutely they are.
It's just no question about it.
Again, kind of making that construction connection with all of us. One thing I used to hear quite a bit when working with contractors or working with employers would be this, some version of, we can teach someone, how to do this trade, whatever it may be. We can teach. It's not easy, don't get me wrong, but we can teach someone how to be an electrician.
Yeah.
We can't teach someone necessarily, or it's more difficult, I would say, teach someone to, have emotional intelligence or be a really effective communicator or to be comfortable with difficult conversations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would argue that, I mean, those are the key skill, the core competencies in any occupation.
Well, I mean,
really.
you just hit it on the head too, because like you're not going to be a leader or stick your neck out in any way unless you're willing to deal with, things impacting your emotional intelligence. Having difficult conversations, probably the biggest thing, because they're hard. And
Absolutely.
You have to have them because they don't go away. You have to have them. And you do need skills to do it. And you can learn those skills. It doesn't have to be embedded. Yes, some people, there's temperament, there's everyone's psychological makeup, but these are skills you can learn.
Oh, absolutely. You can learn them, you can practice them. You just, you need a little bit of help sometimes.
For sure.
Getting there, and I think of even myself, and I think of my kind of career progression. I'm someone who, I struggle personally with having difficult conversations, but it's something even through my experiences preparing as a trainer and as a facilitator, and coaching other people to be able to do that. I've even been able to kind of learn and practice those skills.
Oh yeah, it would definitely help you personally, having been, on that kind of in that terrain all the time. Yeah. And I struggle with that all the time too. And I mean, anytime I've had a hard conversation, I've never regretted the intent and the courage to go have it. Yeah. And it's more about, to me, and I'm just gonna, just give an opinion here. It's very subjective, but it's not so much. It's that I don't know if it'll come out right, and I don't know exactly how, and that's the hardest part to get over. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but if I just do it, even though it might not, I could have said things different. I could have done way better. It's always a good feeling after. And usually, even if it's a start where the tension gets a little less, or whatever the problem is, you look at the problem and not the person that you're across the table, right? You're kind of separating and
it's and there's strategies, there's techniques, things you can practice. One thing that we're big on is kind of this 4-step process for kind of coaching feedback that we use in so many of our programs, which is, we state it's almost a script that I used to have it at one point taped up on my desk. And that script is, this is what I saw. This is the expectation. Give me your side of it. And what can we do now to work together to build a plan to improve upon? So even just having kind of a system or a script,
at least a navigated,
literally I would, insert issue here.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful in those
circumstances. It is. And, I can just, if people are listening in, as you say that, a lot of times you hear that and you think, it sounds so simple, or even maybe silly. It sounds silly, but that's the kind of the territory you're in. When you're in that territory, you're going to feel really vulnerable. You almost feel parts you're still going to feel like a little kid. You don't know what you're supposed. I don't even know what you're supposed to, how do I deal with this? How do I get started? But it's just very simple checkpoints.
That's right.
It sounds too simple.
Having a script again, almost just having a template there of kind of how to start and have those conversations, and so much of it as well. And it's something that we do quite a bit. Is making the connections with kind of emotional intelligence and kind of understanding, ourselves. Before Absolutely. Being able to, work to necessarily understand others, which is the next step. But, getting a good understanding of kind of who I am, where my strengths are, where I struggle. Again, things like maybe difficult conversation, just by knowing and becoming aware, that's a challenge area for me. It's something I need to work on. I'm able to, kind of adapt and adjust how I arrive in some of those certain situations.
Yeah, 100%. I think emotional intelligence is something that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Daniel Goldman.
I have,
So he gives some TED Talks and writes a lot of books on emotional intelligence. He's kind of like the guy, or one of the guys, on. And just his statement just jumped out at me, it's EI is in emotional intelligence, a far greater measure of who will make a good leader than IQ.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, your IQ can be way up there and whatever, right? But and I remember when he said that, I was thinking I got a lot of work to do myself, and that's the hardest part, right? Is it's work, to go inside and think of where am I weak in my emotional intelligence? Where am I? But you're right. It's such a just self-awareness is a constant learning process, right? Like, why did I just
Absolutely.
react that way? What's this trigger? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
And even just being able to take a breath and take a step back and think about something before responding, right? And these are things, again, at Fairwinds that, you know, we take pride in being able to help
you break it down.
We break it down. We've got, you know, a number of really good kind of assessment tools that we use. You know, we're big supporters of DISC, personality dimensions, and using those assessments and tools in helping individuals, again, kind of gain that self-awareness and some of that emotional intelligence. And again, giving them the tools to kind of understand themselves and then be able to adjust and adapt to others, and ultimately hopefully be able to kind of identify some of those traits in other people as well, so that you can kind of customize your message.
Quick shout out to the newest sponsor of the show, the Stone Depot. The Stone Depot is located in Bears Lake, Halifax, but serves all of the East Coast. The showroom over 8,000 square feet, perfect for masonry contractors, landscaping contractors, builders, developers. Regardless, the Stone Depot is a great option for you, whether you're doing fire pits, patio stones, kitchen and interior stones. So if you're looking for a great stone supplier, visit the Stone Depot. This episode is brought to you by Airtight Spaces. Airtight Spaces is Atlantic Canada's first authorized aero barrier dealer. They help create comfortable, healthy, and durable living environments with the added benefit of energy efficiency. Air sealing is a critical step towards net zero buildings. Using air pressure to automatically guide sealing guarantees the highest quality results in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort. If air sealing is important to you, you can visit Airtight Spaces at www.airtightspaces.com. Pivot Bookkeeping is your one-stop shop and customizable bookkeeping, tax, and filing service. With Pivot, you have the peace of mind knowing your taxes are always filed on time and your bookkeeping is reconciled often. Using their non-proprietary software and applications, all of your business finances are securely handled by their local account managers. Pivot takes great pride in providing you with unlimited support and a direct line to your account managers right here in Nova Scotia. Whether you're an established business looking for new options and increase efficiency, or a newer company looking to build a solid foundation for future growth, Pivot has a product that can be modified to your needs. Consider making the pivot today. Book a free consultation at pivotbookkeeping.com.
So DISC, dominance, influence, conscientiousness, and steadiness.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it kind of reminds me of like the Myers-Briggs model, or there's other similar things, right? It's just a way of kind of understanding like where you fit in. It's not like putting people in a box, but understanding where you fit in the grand scheme of things.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it would be very similar, kind of your baseline. It's really just about, you know, it comes down in a lot of ways to, you know, it's not to say that you can't, you know, do as someone I fall into kind of that personality, which is kind of that stabilizing, relationship nurturing kind of personality.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that if I work at it, I can't end up in that dominant personality.
And you probably should work at it, right? I think it's important to stretch. You're going to have your baseline. You're going to have your things that, you know, are kind of core.
Yeah.
But the more you try and stretch out into, you know, you're going to grow. Maybe that one's really hard and you're never going to excel in this, you know, top corner here. But like, yeah, it's not like you can't change those things either, right?
No, it's just that, you know, it takes a little bit more energy for me to live in that quadrant.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Than it does to live in, you know, my natural one.
Yeah, and then it comes to like the self, you know, your self-criticism. You know, you right away you're thinking like it's kind of like labeling, right? Like, oh, I don't like how that looks, but I know it's true. You know what I mean? Like everybody has their own way of. So it's you're looking in a mirror. It's not easy sometimes.
Nope, absolutely not. But you know what? The best leaders are able to do it, you know, and again, it doesn't always, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, to some extent, perhaps it is something that you're somewhat born with, but it's a skill like any other skill, which you can acquire and you can practice. And
what's that saying? It's harder for a man to rule himself than rule a city or something.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a good one.
It's tough to, like you said, though, the best leaders do that. And it does takes a lot of courage to look inside because you're going to see things you don't like.
Oh, yeah.
You know it's true.
Absolutely. No, and I think a lot of people have done that in recent years. Again, I mean, you're talking about the pandemic.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah. A little more time to self-reflect. Is that what you're getting at?
I think so, yeah. I think a lot of people, I mean, I would have thought, you know, with the pandemic, it would have been the opposite. People would have been kind of holding on to dear life because of that uncertainty that existed. But, you know, I think instead it was the other way around. A lot of people kind of took that time, whether you were at home with your families, to kind of reevaluate your priorities and you know, kind of reevaluate your current situation.
Well, you're forced to slow down when you're living at a pace that's almost inhuman, like a lot of us have to sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the culture. No, this is great stuff. I mean, this is, you know, for business owners tuning in and who haven't, I mean, most business owners now are, you know, really, I think, keen on engaging someone like whether it's Fairwinds Training and Development, whether it's something like Traction, whether it's some, you know, outside consultants and having a good handle on this stuff. But if you're not doing it, it's too hard to compete with the hiring process, the retention, the training. And we didn't even get into succession now, or you were talking about some examples. You know, I don't know.
I mean, it's such a, you know, it's so hard, you know, I think for so many, you know, managers and so many owners, you know, I think not necessarily just, but probably more so as well when we're talking about kind of small to medium sized businesses. It's so hard to get out of that day to day of kind of running that business.
Oh, you're immersed
if you're in the field, you're just completely immersed. And, you know, a lot of the time, yes, absolutely, we're good at what we do. But a lot of the time, it's just it's the fact that we are able to commit. I'm able to commit my time to helping you, you know, fill position X, or to helping you coach this individual who's, you know, maybe almost engaged and has a ton of potential, but just isn't quite there yet.
Right. You just need that extra. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of that. And I think, you know, if you don't bring someone in like yourself, someone like Fairwinds, there's all kinds of little gold nuggets there that you miss out on, right? Because you need that time. You don't have time to do it. You don't have time to do all these things.
Oh yeah,
stay attentive to.
Absolutely, and it's you know, when you look at the labor market and the challenges that people are facing, it's funny. I remember, you know, when I first would have arrived at the Construction Association Nova Scotia in 2010, 2011, I can't quite recall. You know, I remember people were talking at that point about, you know, these challenges that are coming down on us and we're going to feel it. And, you know, you better prepare. You better start looking kind of proactively at, you know, some workforce planning and your strategy at, you know, how you're going to overcome this, or again, at least mitigate
the problem
this.
Wasn't close enough to.
But it wasn't necessarily close enough. There was a couple, it seemed like there might have been a down year or two in between that, and it kind of just got brushed off a little bit, I think. But then it finally seems like over the last couple of years, you know, it really hit. And though it might, perhaps it shouldn't have, it still caught people off guard.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it is. And again, I realize it's really important. It's difficult for an owner and for a manager to kind of, again, get out of that day to day. But you know, there's got to be some sort of, you do have to have some sort of, I think, proactive strategy for kind of filling that talent pipeline.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're a business owner who's always looking 2 to 5 years down the road. I mean, it's constantly the territory you're thinking about, right?
Yeah, and it's so competitive. For you know, for good people, you think you have someone in there,
and then you got to keep them once you have them, and they're probably gonna, you know, people are getting poached here and there. Might be more pay, better cult. Who knows, right?
I mean, it's interesting, even just kind of the recruitment kind of timeline, and how much that has tightened up from the perspective of if you've got a candidate, you know, that you're putting forward to you know, to a client. Mm-hmm. If that's a strong candidate, you let them sit for. You
better not let them sit very long.
You let them sit for a week, you know, while you're doing some stuff in behind the scenes. They're gonna get nabbed up pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's such a competitive landscape all around, right?
Yeah.
State of. Can we talk a little bit about succession and just like, you know, when a company is, you know, got shareholders and it could be generational, it could be, you know, retirement. On the horizon, but other reasons too.
Yep.
I just think about how that would be possible for some companies, depending on, you know, the culture and the management team, or how it would be possible to navigate that without some help, you know.
It's challenging. Again, I think it's, you know, and it's not to say it's not a challenge for larger organizations, because it absolutely is, but
it can be just as big of a challenge for medium-sized.
But I think it's,
smaller
I think it is.
companies too, right?
It's the medium to smaller companies who
Fairwinds helps as much, right? You guys are helping people as big as Dexter's and JD Irving, and then any company with the 2 employees who needs a hand.
Yeah, doesn't even need to be 2 employees. I mean, we're working with entrepreneurs
startups.
through some of our partnerships, some startups who are, it's one individual who's looking to start. But, I think when, considering some of those small, medium enterprise and that succession planning piece, again, it's a tough thing to do if you don't know. Certainly if you don't know what you're doing, but absolutely if you don't, again, have the time or the resources to get into it. And I think because of that, you're seeing some companies either get, gobbled up by larger ones, or you're seeing some companies, unfortunately, just kind of disappear with, mom and pop who were running it for so many years. But, one thing, again, from that kind of perspective, one thing that we're able to do, and again, it's not always easy, but we're able to kind of connect and partner with a company and help them look a little bit more at that kind of, we'll say, kind of proactive, strategic workforce planning piece, which is really, it's kind of looking at, this is our, looking at your business model, looking at where you want to go in the next however many years, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, whatever you think. And, looking at who are we going to need, what people, what skills are we going to need to get there. And then it's kind of looking internally and externally, doing a bit of a kind of a workforce analysis, an environmental scan of, all right, these are the people and the skills.
Yeah, even that.
We have inside.
Yeah, even the job profile. You're going to need a senior marketing manager in
Absolutely.
2 years, or a site super for this project next year.
Absolutely.
And this is what, this is the skill set you need, the experience level, just to know that. And that's just the start.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, you're looking at, this is what we have inside, what is out there in kind of the climate and the labor market around us, and then kind of, what's that gap between what you're going to need to meet your business objectives and what is available, and then, working on strategy from there. And, whether it's a deficit or whether it's a surplus, that's going to impact your strategy. Is it recruitment? Is it training from within? Whatever it might be, we're able to help organizations kind of identify that strategy, help them develop it, help them implement that strategy, and even help them kind of monitor, assess, and adjust that strategy as it goes
surveying
on.
and whatnot. Just a lot of feedback. And you mentioned earlier, like, one of the things Rick was doing at the time at that time was, doing some training for cans. And, a lot of what Fairwinds is, you're catering training courses to different organizations. But you're also there kind of helping them set up their own training programs, so that when your job is done, that, they have implemented and they have an engine going to continue to train, continue to coach, and that it's trickling down through the ranks and the.
I mean, ideally, you're going to want that repeat business, but at the same time, you want to leave, once you've helped an organization, you want to leave them with the tools to be able to continue on and do it themselves. It's like the old, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him fish, I probably screwed that.
No, I know exactly. I can't remember how it goes either, but I was thinking, train your employees well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they stay.
Exactly.
I think that's,
I like that. That's a lot better. Saying. That's right. We'll take that one instead. But, you mentioned, groups like CANS, we've talked about them a number of times, but, something, yes, we work with a lot of contractors. We work with, a lot of suppliers, service providers, manufacturers, but we've also done, we've been fortunate that we've been able to reach a lot of individuals and also a lot of companies through some of those partnerships that we've been able to develop with, whether it's, public sector stakeholders, not-for-profits, contractors associations, sector councils, whatever it may be. We've been fortunate enough that we've been able to kind of build relationships and partner with a lot of those groups and help them provide tools and training to their memberships.
Yeah, no, and they need it so much, right? I mean, these smaller companies, it's tough to get things off the ground, and it's tough when you don't have the resources in house that some of the more medium sized and bigger companies do. It's such a challenge.
Absolutely.
So
and again,
you would bring so much value to those. I mean, not that you're bringing value to everyone. And again, Fairwinds, like, you look at the testimonials. I mean, you're helping companies from everything from JD Irving to people in the restaurant industry. Dirty Nelly's, got to give them a shout out, it's all across the board. But I feel like there's a certain size company that it's even carries more weight, just because it's so hard to kind of get past that milestone and get to the next level where you do have maybe, sales and marketing and HR in place, and at least you have some of those resources around you, right?
That's
you don't,
right.
You're just stuck in your own head as an entrepreneur.
Or you're working,
70
hours a week, whatever it might be. It's just not. And again, we are certainly, I believe, very good at what we do, but a lot of it is just being able to be kind of a devoted, committed resource, again, being that HR extension, that HR branch, that arm for your organization.
Mm-hmm. And sales training is another thing like that I see under the different personal and team training things that we've talked about, different training programs. But, sales there's a science to it. There's an art to it. I mean, a lot of people who we had Wolseley on for a recording recently, and, a gentleman who worked a bit on the sites. I think he worked at Dexter's, and, he's in sales now for HVAC and plumbing. And so, he kind of has that rapport with the guys on site, and you hear a lot of those stories. A lot of times the guys that you can make that connection with the clientele, the kind of people you're dealing with. But, if you haven't tried it, then it's probably not something that you maybe gave much thought to, but, it can be such a grind.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
Knowing where to spend that mental energy and where not to spend it is probably the orientation point out to be, to be successful. But understanding the market, understand who you're talking to, who they represent, what the opportunity is here. Yeah. There's so much that goes into it.
And even just having a system and a process in place, I find, a lot of people kind of in that sales, business development world
they don't always, they're kind of just winging it.
Kind of just flying by I mean, I spent a number of years in sales, and it was a great company but I was flying by the seat of my pants. You know what I mean? I was figuring it out on a day-to-day basis. So even just having kind of a process or a system that you can fall back on, and
a proven system that
exactly.
works.
And I think, like you say as well, it's and again, this isn't specific just to construction, but I think it is certainly a challenge within the construction world, is that a lot of new sales people are coming in, and they've got a great technical knowledge. Yeah. They've got great product knowledge. They might even,
which is very important.
Which is absolutely important.
Dealing with architects and specs.
No question. Yeah. But again, if you don't have a process, if you don't have kind of a baseline or a system that you can kind of fall back on, it's, again, you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And that's something that, Rick specifically, that's kind of one of his areas of expertise in that business development side. And he's worked with a lot of businesses and around Atlanta, Canada, and even further, and helping them certainly increase their sales.
Yeah, and he's so passionate, and like you said, high energy, very charismatic. And even when it comes to closing, you hear a lot of that's always in the movies and different sayings, right? Like, gotta close. Right. Yeah, that's a good film. Lots of good actors in that. But even that, like, emotional intelligence plays into that a lot, and kind of when to push. If you push the wrong time, it's over. Yeah. Too early, way too early, and then you just. But knowing, like, okay, this is gone, and those windows of contact, has it been too long? Should I reach out again? All those little things they add up. They are important, right? And you got to understand not just your market and your technical products or services you're selling, but you got to understand people, and like there's a lot that goes into that, right? And I'm sure Rick, you can tell. Even like I said, I haven't talked to Rick that much, and you have the same qualities, like, too. But just to be able to deal with people, and to get better at that, you really have to, you can read about it as much as you want. You need someone training you, and you need to be practicing different. It's like the old saying, like a lot of people as waitresses in larger municipalities and larger cities, even if you're in law school or something, sometimes they'll stay because the money's so good there. But how they pick those employees is a lot of times these high-end restaurants, what they'll do is they'll have the individual come in, and they'll get them to go, and they'll sit at different tables, and they'll have this set up, and they're role playing here.
Yeah.
But can they carry on a conversation with a table full of, we'll say, type A, people that maybe a bit of elitism, and then can they go over and talk to this blue collar crowd over here, and how do they navigate? And that's how they hire them. And this is what sales is. Yeah. Can you talk to all these different kinds of people? All the time.
Absolutely. No question. And again, you mentioned, you said kind of type A and kind of making that, connection back to kind of the personality profiles and the disc that we use quite a bit. I mean, that's a part of it. Again, not understanding yourself, certainly, but being able to, once you get kind of good at pick up, other people's kind of personalities as well. And, understanding, or, at least having a bit of an understanding of, what, might motivate this type of personality. What are they going to respond to versus this type of personality? And there's a ton of value in that. Yeah,
there is, man. I love, I like talking about this stuff because I feel like you can really dive in. It's bringing to mind all these past experiences that that's what's happening here. So can we talk at all about maybe some of the companies within construction that you've been working with, that you've worked with in the past? I mean, I know Rick's got lots of stories. You mentioned Dexter's earlier. Can we talk about some of those scenarios, and like kind of what's happening there? Or
certainly. We've worked with large contractors, the likes of Dexter Municipal, the likes of some JD Irving companies, but also working with smaller contracts as well. Local companies like, we've done some work with Bruno, we've done some work with Jetco Contracting. I mean, dozens, if not hundreds of different companies. And it's, it's interesting, although, all organizations have some similarities, and there's certain programs that, you could
kind of generic
that are kind of a little bit more generic, even though we do customize a lot of what we do. But, at the same time, there are programs that are a little bit more tailored towards certain, I guess, kind of certain parts of the industries. We talk about the business development and the sales training. And we've had a lot of uptake with that, specifically when working with suppliers, when working kind of the wholesale distribution side of things. Again, when you're getting individuals coming into sales roles with lots of technical knowledge, organizations, or they look to us, and we're able to help them kind of develop more of that, again, that business development, that sales skill. When looking at working with a lot of the work that we do with contractors is, more along what we were talking about earlier with is helping them build capacity in their management group. So, more often than not, we do a lot of work, again, with frontline managers, with new managers. And it's not just, it's training and development. We do a lot of coaching as well, kind of one-on-one.
Okay. And it's one-on-one type coaching.
We'll do one-on-one coaching. It could be with a team. It could be in follow-up to training. It could be as a part of kind of a performance management program that we're helping them put in place. So that would be, again, kind of the supplier side of things, the contractor side of things. When dealing with, and again, we do quite a bit of work with kind of public sector organizations, again, associations, sector, whatever it may be. When working with a lot of those groups, a lot of what we're doing is more focused on planning, whether it's strategic planning, whether it's, workforce planning, succession planning. We do a lot of the work we do with those groups is helping them, kind of develop templates and tools that they can then pass on, and also helping them kind of create a roadmap for,
a system,
for their future.
Right. Yeah. And even, I think one of the services that you provide under surveys and assessments and whatnot is just like corporate protocol, like employee conduct, these things like this, right? I mean, that gets important when you have large corporations. Your company's growing up to 50 to 100 to 200, 300 employees, right? You have to have protocols in place. You
Simple
can't just wing
things
it
that, I mean,
anymore,
you
right?
start business, things kind of take off on you, and then you realize we don't even have any HR policies in place.
Yeah, what's our policies, right?
What's
And
our
everybody hates that
policy?
word, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but it's got to be there.
We've got no performance management process in place at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So working with businesses, whether it's, anything really HR related, but certainly we
Even
do a
just
lot
to
of policy-
assess the performance of your
assess the
employees.
performance. Yeah, we can do it for them. We can provide them. I worked with one local contractor that I can think of now where, essentially we built their entire performance management
Okay.
program, all the way from literally developing job descriptions to developing templates for their performance reviews and performance planning and kind of everything connected to that.
Yeah. What would you say? I mean, as far as an associate here with Fairwinds, like, what's the most rewarding part for you personally? I mean, you kind of get into to know these companies, as you work with them, and I'm assuming a lot of them you work with them. Maybe it's just a few months, a lot of times a few years or more.
Yeah.
And you're constantly, you kind of, have the inside scoop, and it's pretty exclusive, and it must be, I mean, obviously challenging, but rewarding when you see that you're able to bring that value and get them over that hump and through that milestone that, they couldn't have got there. I mean, so they couldn't have got there without you, but that they needed your help with, right?
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, an example from this week pops out, actually, to be perfectly honest.
Story time.
Yeah, actually, doing some leadership training with a local contractor, and did a module several weeks ago with them on conflict management, and then returning yesterday, as a matter of fact, and doing a second module on another topic. I believe we were looking at motivation and accountability, but even just as a part of the process, kind of, recalling, looking back on the session that was. We always like to do a little bit of recall whenever we're doing kind of a training program.
Yes.
Asking questions, was anybody able to apply something we learned from our last session to your day-to-day over the past week or 2 weeks, whatever the time frame is between modules. And to have someone in the room, put their hand up and say, well, yeah, actually I was able to, through some of the skills, some of the things that we learned in that session, I was able to have a difficult conversation with one of my team members, that I really would have struggled with otherwise. I was able to use some of the tools that you gave me to have that conversation, and it worked out. It went really, really well. So, hearing that, getting those kind of stories from individuals is certainly rewarding.
It's personal growth and it's team building at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And a sense of, and whenever you're training, you're up in front of people in a room. Yeah, you do feel like you're helping people. You're giving them information, get a lot of stuff, but you don't. You're not always 100% certain what those individuals are taking away.
For sure.
When they do, absolutely take something away and they're able to express that and it actually helped them in their day-to-day, it's a rewarding feeling.
Yeah.
And I would say as well, I find in kind of the talent attraction side of things, there's certainly some rewarding elements there. Certainly when you can help the client
find the right person,
find the right
fit.
person.
Yeah.
And it's relatively seamless, but
not just the skill set, but the fit for the culture, the fit for the employee, what they're looking for long term, all that kind of stuff, right? Tough, a lot of variables there to check
but
off.
Even as well, the connection with the individual from that reward sense of reward side of things, you get to know a candidate for a position, you get their resume, you do a telephone screening with them, you have an interview with them, you do a job fit assessment, maybe you facilitate a second or third, and you start to feel a connection with these
Of course,
people, right?
And they're in transition. It's an important time, a stressful time.
Yeah. And you hear their stories, and then being able to connect with that individual with, having that phone call saying, we'd like to offer you the position of whatever it may be. It's and there's genuine excitement. It's a good feeling.
Oh, that's great. And I remember asking different people this question. It ties in a lot to what you just explained, but I mean, going back to kind of that analogy or allegory of comparing sports to business, and just how, I mean, it's a really easy connection with the training and development. Kind of speaks for itself, but what would you say, like, I mean, as far as, you played, football at a high level, university, you've coached, you've been a coach, different sports, and how has those experiences helped you in your work life? And I mean, as far as your career journey and Cans and obviously now with Fairwinds,
Yeah.
but just a little personally for you, I mean, I know I can rhyme off all the lessons I've learned in sports too, but just a few comments on how that how the lessons you've learned in sports have kind of helped you in the role you're in.
I mean, I think one of the biggest ones that always comes to mind to me is the ability to take feedback. Whether it's coaching, whether it's constructive, I should say, criticism.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things is you learn, I remember getting that from an early age all the way through, and being able to apply that to my work life. And I've had performance reviews the same as anyone has. I've had failures, I've had successes, but being able to, I guess, kind of take that feedback and respond to it in kind of a productive way would be one of the biggest takeaways for me. And again, another one would be kind of the emotional intelligence, yes, from your perspective, but also from trying to get a sense of others as well. And through that, again, being able to kind of adapt or adjust how you communicate, how you work with that individual. Yeah. And I say that because one of the best coaches I ever had, I remember Can you say his name? Yeah, it was Coach Nill with the Huskies.
For the Huskies, okay.
He was one thing I always thought he was really good at is that he could adjust his approach
with different players.
With one player, there were players that he got a sense, I think, that to motivate, he had to maybe shout and scream and do all that stuff.
And they'd respond well to that.
And they'd respond well to that. And then I think he saw and knew that there were others that they need a slightly different approach. They're not necessarily going to respond in the way. And I think he was able to kind of adapt and make that adjustment. And you hear that about coaches, guys like John Cooper in Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, yeah. He had a pretty good post game last night. He's pretty short-winded there. He didn't give him much. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. But you hear about some of those guys. Yeah. I think I see it sometimes. I'm a Steelers fan, so you see it with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. But again, it's that ability, I think, to be able to kind of adjust and adapt how you arrive based on the individual. It's not, ultimately it's not how you want to be, how you want to lead. It's how that individual needs you to lead.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Is there anything else on behalf of Fairwinds or that we didn't touch on that you kind of want to mention? Or, I mean, we touched on quite a few different things.
Sure.
But,
no, just, I think I'd be, I should certainly plug us and what we do. And we've got a great team. We've got a great leadership group there. Certainly Rick and Brenda, I was saying before this, kind of the Yoda and the Obi-Wan of the, professional development in our neck of the woods. If there's any, employers out there right now who need some help or are looking, please reach out. You can get us at fairwinds.com. All of our contact info is there. You can get me at Alain, ALAIN, at fairwindstraining.com. Always looking for opportunities to connect, and certainly no cost associated with having a meeting, consulting, and chat, and even if it's just networking, connecting, always up for that as well.
For sure, yeah. And we'll put those handles and tags in all of our content going out. And yeah, I hope that contractors, owners of businesses of any kind that are listening in, and need some help with any of these important items.
I will actually I do want to add one more
Absolutely.
thing, Dan, and I say one more thing.
Take your time. Take your time.
I'll add something else again in a minute. But anyhow, I do, sir. I want to recognize what you're doing here. I mean, I think this is such a fantastic thing for the industry, bringing the awareness, bringing the knowledge out there. I've kind of watched it grow over the last couple of years, and I think it's fantastic. And there really are, there's so many. One things I love about the construction industry is there's so many phenomenal people. And so many groups out there doing fantastic work as well, on behalf of the industry. I mean, again, we talked about cans a number of times. They're doing, they got a great group over there. The Nova Scotia Construction Sector Council, Trent Southolt and his team over there, they're doing fantastic work. NSCC, the Nova Scotia Apprenticeship Agency, the Department of Education. There's so many groups out there right now.
Everyone's doing their part, right? It's so important. Everyone plays a big role to keep this ship moving.
And I think it's fantastic, and I see the partnerships, and I'm a big fan of that, and I love seeing it, and I just wanted to recognize that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. You said you might have had two or you said maybe
I think there were two things in one there. I think we're good.
We're good.
And one more. No, I'm sorry.
It's funny. A lot of times people right after they leave, they're like, I forgot to say, but that's pretty normal. But no, thank you, Alain, for the kind words, and I couldn't agree with you more. All those important parties in the industry doing their part. It's a fun industry to be part of, and it's definitely been a pleasure. I'll thank Rick and Brenda, Rick Flair and Fairwinds Training and Development for connecting with us and engaging with us and being here. Been a great conversation. Really great.
Again, our pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks. Cheers. This episode is brought to you by Cook Insurance, your trusted insurance broker in Atlantic Canada for 50 years. Insurance is complex, and the Cook team focuses on delivering comprehensive solutions for your construction needs, including builder's risk, wrap-up liability, performance bonds, and project-specific construction. A Navicord partner since 2020, Cook is one of the largest construction brokers in Canada and offers national strength with a local touch. Whatever your insurance needs are, Cook has you covered.
The team at Atlantic Construction Podcast have been able to build a strong relationship with the folks over at FCA Surety. FCA Surety is heavily engaged in supporting the Atlantic construction marketplace and helping contractors to build their businesses, and we can't recommend them enough. While FCA has their head office in Ontario, many of the members of their team have lived in Atlantic Canada and worked in the construction community here. This gives them a unique national perspective with a local flavor. Andrew Cartwright leads FCA's national surety operations as Vice President of Surety. Their knowledge of the bonding marketplace and understanding of how insurance companies view your business is unparalleled. In addition, the depth of their team and reach across Canada gives them the ability to draw on numerous experiences to help clients navigate items like subtrade, construction disputes, liens, and supplier risk management. These are the things that separate FCA Surety from the pack. Make sure to give the guys a call over at FCA Surety for all of your bonding and surety needs.